let's get into this Week 12 slate. And as I told you, a little bit of a different slate than usual. We're not leading with the SEC, not a ton of marquee SEC games this week. But even after last week, where there was a little bit of chaos at the top, there are still two marquee Pac-12 games. Now, the Pac-12 games aren't necessarily for a college football playoff berth like we thought outside of USC, but there are still stakes in terms of the Pac-12 title race, in terms of the race for the Pac-12 championship in Vegas, and of course, a Rose Bowl and New Year's Six appearance. And so let's start with the big one. Frankly, it's about 10 minutes from where I'm recording right now. It is the UCLA Bruins hosting the USC Trojans. USC actually comes in, despite being the quote-unquote road team, as a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under at a staggering 76 points. So a couple things here right off the top. One, that number tells you this is going to be high scoring. It was very high scoring last year. Dorian Thompson-Robinson said, we want to put up another 60 on them. I think it's worth noting, great crowd expected at the Rose Bowl. I can tell you, as somebody who lives in LA, I think it's probably going to be a pretty neutral crowd. So I don't think UCLA is going to have a significant home advantage. Ironically, I was talking to a buddy in LA about this on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was. USC's campus is actually closer to UCLA's home venue, the Rose Bowl. So keep that in mind. No real home field advantage. But what I'll tell you is when these two teams get on the field, I think it's going to be absolutely a fascinating matchup of contrasting styles, especially on the offensive side of the football. With USC, listen, this is all you can ask for if you're USC, right? UCLA is coming off that loss to Arizona, and we know why they're coming off the loss to Arizona. It's because their secondary stinks. They can't stop anybody, and they had absolutely no answers for Jayden de Laura, the Arizona quarterback, last week. Arizona throws for 315 yards. Jayden de Laura, 23 of 29 passing, and literally UCLA's pass defense could not get off the field. The only time they were really leaving the field was after they gave up a touchdown. So that's great news for USC. That's great news for a USC team that throws the ball all over the field. This season, they currently rank in the top 10 nationally and number 3 in the Pac-12 behind Washington and Arizona in pass yardage. I think it'll be that much more important to get into a rhythm passing without Travis Dye. The star running back is hurt. That matters. But the good news is, of course, that you have Caleb Williams at quarterback. And I think it's actually really interesting. Like, I was thinking about this today. Is it possible that Caleb Williams, who was the number 1 recruit in America, the number 1 transfer last offseason, and will probably be almost certainly the number 1 pick in the 2024 NFL draft, is it possible that we're underrating him this season? Because I think that we are. His stats are absolutely unbelievable. 31 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. Now, the completion percentage is not through the roof. But when you look at the number of reasons why USC is having the success that they are, it is Caleb Williams. It is his success. And as we're going to talk about in a second with the USC defense, that matters because without Caleb Williams, this is an offense that needs to put up 40-plus points most nights to win. So the USC offense is rolling. The UCLA pass defense is abysmal, 102nd nationally, and that will absolutely be a factor in favor of USC on Saturday night at the Rose Bowl. Here's the counter to that, though. UCLA is going up against a very bad USC front seven and a very bad USC run defense. Now, USC statistically, if you look at things, the run defense isn't terrible. But if you look at USC in really, frankly, most of their games this year, this is a team that has, as I just said, struggled to stop the run. You go back to that Utah game a few weeks ago, and I know Utah's a great run offense. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But USC gave up 140 yards rushing, 5-6 yards per carry to Utah. You go back to a few weeks ago when USC played a few other teams. They have struggled to stop the run. And I look at this USC team, and I just mentioned it with their defense. The defense has struggled, and part of why Caleb Williams' season has become so interesting is because of the fact that, oh, by the way, this defense can't stop anybody. Yes, they won against Colorado last Friday night. Many of you watched it. But prior to that Colorado game, and Colorado might be the worst team in the Power 5, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, Prior to that Colorado game, here's what they had given up on defense. 35 points in a 41-35 win over Cal. In that game, they gave up close to 500 yards of total offense. The game before, they played at Arizona. That was the game with the crazy play right before halftime. Lincoln Riley screaming at the refs. Well, the refs, it wasn't the refs' fault that you gave up 543 yards of total offense and 37 points in that game. And so you look at USC's last 3 games outside of Colorado last Friday. 42 points in a loss to Utah, 37 points in a win over Arizona, 35 points in a win over Cal. And what that says to me is pretty straightforward, right? The concern that we had for USC all season long hasn't really changed. We know that they have a Heisman caliber quarterback. We know that the skill position guys are on point. But to win at the highest level in college football, we know this. It's up front on defense. It's the D-line. It's the linebackers. I just don't think USC has those guys. And so that's especially concerning going up against a UCLA team. Are you ready for this? UCLA averages more yards per carry than any team in college football, okay? So, and by the way, it's not like they don't run the ball either. They run the ball quite often, but in terms of yards per carry, this was an insane stat that I could not believe when I saw it the first time. They're averaging close to 6.5 yards per carry, 29 rushing touchdowns, 240 yards rushing per game this season. And so I understand it's easy to get down on UCLA, excuse me. I understand. I get it. The frustration, they lose to Arizona as close to an 18, 19 point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. But when I look at this game, one, if it's going to be high scoring. Is it going to hit 76? Probably. Do I feel great about the over? I don't. But 2, I do find it interesting, right? Over the last month, I think most people have kind of circled this game and said UCLA should be the favorite. The run offense is going to give USC fits. And now it's game week and USC is favored. And so my official Betfred Sportsbook pick, it is UCLA plus 2.5 at home. Listen, Lincoln Riley is so far ahead of schedule, it's laughable. I mean, this was a team, and they might still end up being a 9-3 regular season team. But I think most people kind of thought, okay, if you go 9-3 in year one, that is a rip-roaring success. Here he is at 9-1 with 2 games to go and a chance to win the Pac-12, and I believe make the college football playoff if they win out. I don't think they're going to win out, though. I do like UCLA plus the points.